Hello and welcome to another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I have a very special guest with me, someone I randomly bumped into at the last NAMM show, was very excited to finally meet in person after years of friendship. And we struck up a conversation and said, you should come on the show and talk about these amazing things that you're doing. So without further ado, here she is, Karen Garrity. Karen, how are you?
I am great. Thank you. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Welcome to my first video podcast using an actual quality camera.
Nice. Well, let's hope it goes well.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I don't know how long we have known each other. It's got to be at least 7 or 8 years, but we've never met. I was just walking along at the NAMM show. Saw you coming. I thought I'll slow down, motion for you to go through as polite gentleman. And you recognized me. And we just started talking, realized who you were. And I thought, wow, this is really cool.
Right. I know. I had the same reaction because I think we've been Facebook friends for at least 8 years as members of the Perspectives Forum for composers. And I think that's where we've met and we've chatted on different discussions and things like that. And as you were ushering me through, I took a look at your name badge and I'm like, dang, I know who that is. I wasn't expecting to recognize. I mean, it was great. It was great. So that's what happened.
Yeah. And, I'm usually so focused when I'm at the show that I don't, other than like physical proximity, I don't notice a whole lot. I'm just like, I need to go to the Pearl booth. I need to go see Ibanez or whatever. And other than like, you could have passed right by me and I would have never known. So I'm glad you took a moment to look.
Well, me too. Me too. It was a nice diversion.
Now, did we meet on MySpace or was it Facebook?
Facebook. I didn't have MySpace. Yeah.
Yeah. You're good that you avoided that trap.
I did.
I actually went over there the other day and I still have a profile that I can't access, but it's slow in an advertising jungle.
Oh, geez. I didn't even think it would still be live.
Yeah, it really is.
All right.
So you started out really as a cellist. What drove you to cello? Because that's not a common instrument for a woman.
That's a funny story. It actually goes back to 4th grade in New York. I was in the Long Island public school system on Long Island, it was called the Island Trees Public School System. And my best friend and I wanted to do the same thing, and we didn't know what it was going to be. And God bless that orchestra teacher. He came and he did a bang up job. You know how they go to the classroom with all their instruments and do the demonstrations. And he probably looked at us two and saw them as there's the two suckers I need to play cello for me this year. And he talked us into it. He had 2 cellos. He saw 2 little 10-year-olds there, and he talked us into it. And I didn't realize this, or I didn't remember it, but I recently reacquainted with that best friend last year in Colorado. And we met for lunch, and it was like 40 years had never happened. All of a sudden, here we're catching up. And she reminded me of things like we had to borrow and use the same cello. I didn't remember that at all, but she's still mad at me because, first of all, we had to, you know how we tell stories to our kids about how far we had to walk to school and all of that, uphill both ways. Well, we did. We had to walk this dang cello at least a half a mile, with one of us holding the neck, the other holding the end pin. I'm sure the orchestra teacher would have died if he saw us doing it, but it was the only way we could get that stupid thing home. And then apparently, me being the goody two-shoes that I am, I was the one who practiced, and she didn't. And she's still pissed off at me to this day that I got first chair and she didn't. And it was only because I, for some weird reason, I wanted to play that instrument, whereas she was being forced to play that instrument by her parents. So it was a little bit of a different thing. But my family ended up moving away 3 years after that and moved to a very small town on the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. And that was where I had to kind of, either choose to step up my game and take it a little more seriously because there was no orchestra program. So I had to either take private lessons and get into the Portland Youth Symphony or quit. And I wasn't ready to quit. I still kind of liked it. So that's where it kind of all started. I got into with a really good cello teacher and got into the youth symphony and got to tour all over the world. And I mean, it was amazing. So that was my story. That's how I got playing the cello.
How long did you guys have to share?
3 years.
The whole 3 years.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I think the cello is such a beautiful instrument. There's something about that, the sound, the vibration that just connects with your center of gravity and really kind of fills you up.
Yeah, I think my personal take on it is because it's very similar to the human voice, that it resonates with people. And what I like about it is that I can be a melodic instrument, I can be a harmonic instrument, or I can be a bass. I can also be a percussion instrument. So I like the versatility of it.
I tend to, even sometimes when I'm writing, I tend to forget how high the range of a cello actually goes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, well into viola territory.
Oh, at least, yes. Yeah, and way up, we can get into mid to low high range of the violin as well. It might not sound as good. The tone tends to get, it can get a little edgier or a little more metallic sounding, but a good sound engineer like yourself and a great instrument will knock that down right away. So
well, and the higher up the neck that you go, I'm sorry, when you get lower on a cello, you have a much wider vibration. The more that you get towards the center of the instrument, the vibration isn't quite as much. So those higher notes don't have the same strength that they do as your lower notes.
That can be true. I mean, we can play them loud, but they don't possibly resonate as much as they would on the lower strings.
But still can sound unbelievably beautiful.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And, cello, we talked about this a little bit when we were talking the other day. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to listen to it, but the song Stargazer by Rainbow, which is one of their most famous songs, was actually written by Ritchie Blackmore on a cello.
I love that story, and I'm sorry to say I've not had a chance to listen to it yet.
That's okay.
One of those really busy work weekends, but it's on my list.
I'd rather have you be busy because it's a good thing overall.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So you're still performing now?
Yes. I had a concert at Disney Hall on Saturday, and then I worked a sound engineering gig on Sunday. I still actively do weddings and, pretty much everywhere they need a cello. What has changed over the years is simply just the song list, really. I mean, back when I got started fresh out of college, when you got hired to play a wedding, it was fairly typical. You played your wedding charts, which was Mendelssohn and Wagner and Pachelbel and all of that stuff. And then you just did whatever classical stuff you had in your books as for prelude. But now the sky's the limit with the onset of things like YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music and all of that. I think it's opened the world up for clients like my brides who will have heard something on YouTube and they'd heard a string quartet play a Taylor Swift cover, or they heard Metallica, or they heard your song that you were talking about, and they want us to do that for their wedding. So it's been real interesting because if the sheet music isn't out there, we end up writing it for them. And I know most of my colleagues do the same. If it's not out there, we can usually pen a reasonable chart for a very nominal fee, and they get what they want. They get their heart's desire. They get to hear it on either solo cello, or they get it with a string quartet, or whatever they want. But your typical wedding isn't "here comes the bride and there she goes" any longer. It can be the Beatles. It can be Coldplay. It can be whatever the latest greatest on the radio is. So it's kind of fun.
A friend who's a karaoke host, and they each sang a song at their wedding. And her song was "I Can't Believe I Shaved My Legs for This."
Oh, I love that.
But
Is that really a song?
It is.
Oh my gosh, I have to look that up.
Country song, I believe. But
oh, that's hilarious.
It is amazing. If you go on some of the sheet music sites like Sheet Music Plus, you can find a lot of popular song arrangements for classical instruments, whether it be like Master of Puppets for Clarinet by Metallica.
Yep. And I actually have subscriptions to probably 10 of those different sites because I use them so often. It has paid itself back in spades by being able to, if I can find a decent quartet version of a song for a client for $12.99 or $14.99 on Sheet Music Plus, that serves them much better than me having to go and write the same thing. If we want to tweak it a little bit, we can do that. But for the most part, they work out great. And it serves its purpose real well. If we're doing it for a part of the ceremony, they only need, 15, 20 seconds. So it serves itself really well.
Is Canon in D, though, still the traditional part where the bride comes down the aisle?
Oftentimes, a bride will use that. A lot of times, we'll use that for the seating of family and or the wedding party. I typically try to find something that is written in 4 or 8 bar phrases so that I can end it so it sounds like it meant to cadence there, and that's actually how the song was written. And then the wedding guests are like, oh wow, how cool is it that song was written exactly for the length of that aisle? That's why you hire professionals. That's our job, is to keep an eye on all of that and watch as people are walking down the aisle. Try to figure out where the heck did the ring bearer go. I played a wedding once where I think we played Polka Bell for 32 minutes while people were running around in the back of the chapel going, we can't find him. He fell asleep out in the foyer on one of the back pews, and it took a while for them to find him. So we just kept playing and kept playing. I mean, I would have switched songs if I'd known what was going on. We could have circled back to it, but we didn't know. So we just kept playing. But the fun thing that's coming out, and then we can change subjects, but it seems like the new soup du jour in wedding world is mashups. And I'm doing a wedding in a couple of weeks. I'm looking over here because I actually bought the music from Sheet Music Plus. We're doing a mashup of Lover by Taylor Swift that has been put together with Canon in D. Oh, and then and I'm doing that with solo cello and a friend who plays the keyboard miraculously. He plays everything by ear. He is an absolute wonderkind. So we're going to be doing that one. And then we were talking about that. He challenged me. He said, "Hey, look up this other mashup," and he wasn't sure where it was, but it's by the same orchestrator, and I don't think I have his name here. I'm sorry, whoever you are, but I bought your arrangements. Let me see if I can find it down here. No, it's not here. But he did an amazing mashup of Married Life, the theme from Up, with the Bach Gounod Ave Maria. Wow. And it's not like he just took 15 seconds of that song and then switched into Ave Maria and flipped back and forth, which is the way some of the mashups are done. This one is really, really well done. It's like in the left hand he'll be playing the accompaniment from one song, and then he'll be playing the melody of the other song in the right hand.
That's impressive.
It's really cool. I can't wait to do that one. I'm going to transcribe that for cello. So
that'll be amazing.
Yeah. So Oh, I love playing that one, and especially with the Bach Gounod arrangement. It's so pretty. I've actually taken that version of Ave Maria, and I've mashed it together with the melody of that Bach Gounod Ave Maria, and then the other 3 instruments in the quartet are playing the cello suite number 1 in G major, the prelude. for cello. So the cellist is playing just the regular G major suite, and then the first violin is playing Ave Maria. Second violin and viola are doing a little bit of both, and it works really well. So
that's stunning.
We keep it interesting.
I bet. Well,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you played on the Disney stage, but you're also doing gigs as an engineer. For those of us who are not, or for those who are not in the music world, I should say that is audio engineering, and that is mixing, that is making sure that everybody sounds good, everybody can be heard with clarity and boosted up when they need to be. You have a couple of things that you're involved with that we're going to talk about today. So I thought we should start with your course, because this kind of really would be a good first step into getting into the other thing that you do. So you have a home recording course. I just took it last night. It's fantastic. It covers everything from how to set up a recording session to what kind of mic to use to how to name and export a file, which is so important.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came together?
Yes, thank you for asking that. It happened somewhat very unexpectedly, kind of right in the middle of the pandemic. One thing I saw happening, first of all, everyone knows that as professional musicians, our world just shut down. I was out on tour with a Gilbert and Sullivan Orchestra one day, and the next day we were being sent home and all of our performances were being canceled underneath us. We were actually dressed heading to the concert hall as they were canceling our show. Wow. As the pandemic started locking down. So that was how that happened. And then I started watching my colleagues, and I started seeing a lot of people learning how to set up their own home recording studios. And I'm good friends with quite a few recording engineers who do the mixing in the studios. What I've done is called front of house mixing, which is just making people sound good on a live stage. That, to me, I don't want to make it, I don't want to minimize it, but to me, it's much easier than what you guys do in the studio when you're recording stems for a composition. But I know that a lot of shows, they did shut down initially, but they had to keep going. You know, Hollywood had to keep churning out TV, and everyone had to kind of figure out, oh my gosh, what's the new normal? And I saw a lot of really smart people realize, okay, I need to put down a couple $1,000s, buy the equipment, learn how to set up a recording studio fast and good, and learn how to export those raw stems, get them back to the engineer so he or she can then drop them into their board and mix the show, and the show must go on. And I know a lot of shows did that. So I thought that was amazing. I talked to a lot of those musicians throughout the course of the pandemic, and just kind of picked their brains and learned what they did, and just kept some good notes. And then it was July of last year. Well, actually, I need to back up a couple months. I was asked by Paul Zabludowski to work on a fundraiser for his brother's music education program called the David Z Foundation. He wanted to record the song Barcelona by Queen with his wife, who's an amazingly accomplished opera singer. Paul is a rocker. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous opera singer. And they were perfectly suited to do this song that Freddie Mercury did with Montserrat Caballé. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering her last name, but they did it before the Barcelona Olympics. I put out a call to all the musicians in my database and said, who is set up to record remotely and who would want to do this? It's a great thing. We're going to raise money for music education for inner city youth. I had over 200 emails overnight. Like, I'm in, count me in. But I learned quickly that when I said, are you set up to record remotely? Some people were. And, you know, they knew how to do it. They knew how to work Pro Tools and Logic, and they were good to go. But then other people were doing recordings more casually, maybe on their phones, on their iPhone, or in GarageBand, or using Audacity, things like that. So for this particular project, our engineers, we ended up having to hire supplemental staff to help us wade through all of these stems. We ended up with a 105-piece orchestra and a 60-piece choir recording Barcelona from their home studios all over the world. I mean, we had someone phoning it in, they weren't phoning it in, they were sending their stems in from Patagonia, Argentina, and Greece, London, Mexico City, all over the United States. It was mind-boggling and very hard to put together, but we were thrilled with the finished product. And as we were kind of doing our debrief afterwards, we raised tens of thousands of dollars for the foundation, which was awesome. And it was so fulfilling. But I also realized I learned a lot throughout that process, and I realized that there was a teaching opportunity here. First of all, I didn't want to see the musicians who had put all this money into building a home studio. I didn't see that going away after the pandemic. Once things started opening back up again, I wanted to figure out a way to still utilize that, because oftentimes, and I know we're going to get into this later in your podcast, but when I'm contracting musicians for a client, for a composer, if they're a brand new composer, they may not have the budget to have a symphony orchestra at Fox Studio or Warner Brothers or something like that. So I always am trying to think out of the box and think, okay, how can we do this differently? Sometimes we have to pare down the orchestra size, or sometimes we just have to think differently. And I thought, if we can record 200 people from their homes for this project that we did for Barcelona, why couldn't we do that for your symphonic piece or that person's string quartet or whatever? And I think it can be done. So I started talking with different people in the industry and assembling a rough modular system for a home recording course. I felt like I was getting a lot of people asking me, what do I need? How do I do this? How do I set this up? How do I make it marketable? And through all of these conversations and connecting with a dear friend, Rylan Talamo, who is also a sound engineer and a vocalist, we got talking, and I asked him, and I hired him to put together what I thought was going to be just one video. I said, could you put together a tutorial for people so that they could listen to your tutorial and figure out how to set up their own home studio? Sure, I can do that. Well, his video came back and it was like 25 minutes long, and we're both going, it's great. It was phenomenal. The content was amazing, but no one is going to sit down and listen to a 25-minute video. So we both agreed immediately we needed to break it up into bite-sized chunks. And as we sussed that out, we realized that if we put it into a modular format, then it was going to be a lot more usable to not only the beginner who needed to know everything, but it would also be possibly usable for somebody who just maybe needed to learn a fourth of it, or only one video. So we ended up, let me pull that up so I can tell you how we broke it out. Sorry, I'm pulling up my Academy. We have a tab on my website now called Academy, and we'll probably have other tutorials. But right now we've got the Home Music Recording Studio ABCs, and we start with terminology, because a lot of people were saying, you say to bounce the tracks. I have no idea what that means, or what does it mean? What is a signal flow? Things like that. So I started reaching out to people and saying, all right, let's create a vocabulary list. And we ended up with a 3-page vocabulary list. We talk about signal flow, microphones, interfaces, preamps, laptops. We go through all of that. And he breaks it down even more and talks about what microphones are best for different instruments or vocals. Like you have a specific microphone there that works really well for vocal podcasts. And you have a screen on it too, right?
Yeah, pop
filter. Yeah. So he talks about all that. Then we go into what is a DAW, a digital audio workstation. We go into all that terminology and talk about compression, mono versus stereo, bouncing, exporting. Then he goes into Pro Tools for 2 modules. He goes into, no, I'm sorry, 3 modules. He goes into Logic for 3 modules. Oops.
Did I lose
You
you?
hear that?
I hear something. Okay.
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 That
The
was
wonders of Zoom.
weird. Little gremlin.
Yeah.
And then we finish with file naming conventions, which who would have thought that's a thing? But think of yourself as being the engineer who gets 250 stems back for a show that has to be engineered tonight and has to be delivered tomorrow. You don't know who it came from, what instrument it is, and what part of the song it is, what cue it is, or anything. So we got very, very specific about how to name each cue so that the engineer can go, that is cue 1.01. Boom, knock it in there, and so on. And then the last module, we go into video tips, how to make your video look as good as you can, and have it. The most important thing in all of this that I probably should have started with was we wanted everything to be plug and play. It needed to be able to just send it to the engineer, and the engineer go, fine, great, channel 10. This one goes into channel 49, and he doesn't have to auto-tune. She, sorry, bad habit. They don't have to auto-tune. They don't have to do anything as far as trying to line anything up. They've got it all plug and play, ready to go. So that's how this all came about. And then I ended up formulating a great relationship with a guy at Sweetwater who said he would work with people, help them figure out what equipment best suited their needs and their budget, and then he would give them package deals. So I actually have used him multiple times, setting up my own sound equipment on my own cello, and I also used him to buy a new pickup, a new pedal, a new preamp, the whole 9 yards. So he's great for that. So we wanted it to be kind of a one-stop shop where you could go if you wanted to for a very, very nominal sum and learn all of this as you wanted. And you buy it once, you own it for life. You set up your own username, your own passcode, and then it's yours, and it's always there. So that was kind of a long way of answering that.
No, it's great.
Sorry. Okay.
One thing that I'm so glad that they talked about in the course was that when the engineer gets it, they need the entire length of whatever that clip is going to be. So even if you don't start playing until the 3rd minute in, you need to export the entire song. A very harsh lesson I learned on the first film I ever worked on was that I thought if I just give each piece and say, well, it starts at 3 minutes and 1 second, they would be able to pop it in. And that is not the case.
Right. Yeah. And it's so important to have prep files leading into bar 1. So I think in the case of Barcelona, simply because we were working with people from so many different countries and languages and all of that, we put in 4 measures of prep so that we gave them 2 bars to listen and hear the click, and then they clapped on the downbeat of bar 3, and it gave them 2 more complete measures to get their instrument up, flute, cello, whatever, and start playing on the downbeat of bar 5. And, this was all spelled out really, really meticulously in an instruction sheet to all the musicians. So they could just go, okay, step 1, this is what I do. Step 2, this is what I do. You can't leave, when you're working in a remote setting, you can't leave anything to chance. Because, you can't, I'm not there. Like if I'm the booth manager, I'm not there to help them answer their questions. They've got to kind of figure it out on the fly, or they have to be able to call me, or they have to be able to call their engineers. So that is a really important lesson to know, and also to know to set your bit rate at the correct rate that is going to be the same bit rate as what the engineer's board is going to be. Mm-hmm. That's also spelled out very clearly in the instructions. That's something I learned. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, and it's like all the things that you learned on that very first project. It was kind of rushed. It was so out of the blue and out of the box that, you're going to learn some really important lessons. But once you take that and you say, okay, now I've been through this, here's everything that worked, here's everything that didn't. And then you can just revise as you go on. And you've got it down to a science now. Well,
we kind of, but I've also, I've been offering this course out to friends like, like I did to you. I've been sending it out. I offered it as a promotion to the whole Perspectives composer community, because I would like to get some feedback on it. I want to know, how can we improve it? I don't see it as being an end all be all. Like you said, when we talked the other day, technology is going to change, practices are going to change. So it's something that I think we're going to have to continually update, but there may be things we forgot. I mean, it like you said, we went through trial by fire with the Barcelona project, and we somehow survived it and came out of it with what we thought was a really good product. But there was a lot to learn that we could have done better. There were a lot of things we did really well right out of the gate, which was fabulous. But then there were a lot of things that we learned, we either needed not to do at all, or we needed to just figure out another way to say it or do it or whatever. So, yeah.
Well, I think the other thing that's important is that, yes, gear is incredibly accessible now. You can find even decent sounding gear with a low end price, but if you don't know how to make it work, if you don't know how to get the best out of it, you're not going to be able to turn in a good recording.
Right.
And you can't afford to say, hey, I really like what you did. Can you re-record it? Because it distorted a little bit around minute 3. And then trying to get a hold of that person, find a time where they can record when you're on a deadline. It doesn't, it has to be just done right.
It has to be perfect. By the time it goes back to you, if you're my client and it goes back to you, I'd better darn not send you a flawed file.
Yeah.
Number one, that reflects on me. That reflects badly on me, because I obviously haven't paid attention to detail enough to realize that there was a problem with the file. By the time the files go back to the composer, they need to be pretty darn perfect. And that sounds harsh, but that all just needs to be figured out in your studio. As you're recording it, what you need to do differently. What you need to correct or whatever. So correct that before you send it over. Don't send it over with a note. Hey, by the way, I blurped on the note in measure 51. Can you fix that?
Right.
No, they can't fix that. And I don't want to ask them to fix that. They've got so much on their plate anyway. So,
and the other side of things, just from general business practices, is if I sent you a note like that, I would probably expect that you're not going to reach out to me for another project.
Right. And Hollywood's a big town, but it's also a town with a long memory, and you don't survive too many of those.
Yeah. And with remote recording, the playing field is so much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting that feedback again.
Are you? I'm not hearing it this time.
Yeah, it's an echo. Now it's gone.
Very strange. Well, what would it be without some technical challenges?
There it is again. When it happens, I see a light go on under your window that is probably doing your audio recording. I wonder if your two programs are fighting one another.
Well, I'm just using my iPhone plugged into the computer for Zoom, and then I've just got my DAW that's recording my microphone. So I'm not even doing audio through the phone at all.
Oh.
Yeah, very strange. Well, this is the first time I'm using this setup, so there we go.
Okay, well, if we have to redo this, I'm available Wednesday. Okay.
I think we'll be okay. So this kind of leads me as a segue to the other side of things. Let's say now I'm the composer and I need a string section, or I need some brass or something. I come to you and go, Karen, can you help me?
Absolutely. Yes, I can help you. Yeah. You talked about how I started on the cello. So started on the cello, went professional, played professionally, chamber music solos, orchestral, all over the place. Got into doing some rock concerts. That was fun and well and good. And then just organically, and I don't even remember how it happened, but I started being asked to contract musicians for, we call them casuals, but that's basically anything that's kind of a one-off. So that could be a wedding, a party, a bar mitzvah, a corporate event, whatever. So I got asked long time ago, like I was doing this as long ago as in college. I would be asked to throw together a string quartet for something. So I did that. And then I started building really good books because I was getting asked more and more to do it. And if you are being asked to lead it, you darn well better be able to provide the music for whatever ensemble that is. So started building up a pretty darn big, I mean, it fills a whole room now, a huge music library for a whole bunch of different ensembles. And then agents started reaching out to me and asking me if I could kind of like be their go-to person for their agency. And they would contact me and say, I need a trio for this. I need a 15-piece orchestra for that. So I did that I've been doing that, gosh, for over 40 years. I've been doing that a long time. And then started getting into contracting musicians for live events like big concerts, and then it started getting into booking musicians for recording sessions. So as I was growing through all of this, I was growing my music library, I was growing my database of musicians. We all at one time or another have said, oh, hey, I need a trumpet player for something. Who do you know? So as you do that, you keep adding them to your database. And after a while, you end up with a database of, 500, then 1,000, and you end up with a database of really good musicians. And, I've been here in Southern California now for, 30 some years. And I've played with these people over and over and over and over again. You know how well they're going to play and how professional they are, that they show up on time, they look good, they're easy to work with, there's no drama. Those are the people that I want to work with, and I want to get them work as well. So if you came to me tomorrow and said, hey, I have a project, I'm doing a TV show, I need a 32-piece orchestra, here's my breakdown, can you get that for me? We want to record next week. Yes, I can do that. And it just, again, kind of organically, you started reaching out to the studios, getting to know the studio managers, learning their rates and their specs and how big their rooms are, what their maximum capacity is, so that, if you came to me tomorrow and said, well, now I need to record 147 musicians, where can you put me? I would know. So that just kind of all, has come to fruition. And I just got back from doing an anime convention. It's actually my third anime convention. I never thought I would be doing anime. But my gosh, what a fun group of people. The music is all coming from their shows, which are either usually a series of episodes that then oftentimes get made into major length, full length movies. And they have these conventions all over the world, just like Comic-Con and the video game conventions and all of that. They do these anime conventions all over the world. And I've contracted orchestras now in LA, New York City, and most recently Washington, D.C., and got to fly there and play in the orchestras and put together the musicians, again, networking with people that I already knew who live in that area, and then they helped me put together a really kick-ass orchestra, and it's so much fun. The audience members, the shows sell out like in 5 minutes once they find out who the composer is and what the show is. So, for example, in New York City, we did the show My Hero Academia, The composer is Yuki Hayashi, and he is an absolute legend in Japan. So you put him in front of a bunch of anime fans in New York City in November, they just went ape. They were so excited to be there. They stood and danced and sang the whole concert, and were in full cosplay, full costume, and to be in the orchestra on the receiving end of all that energy. I mean, I have goosebumps just thinking about it, because it's so energizing to play when you know the audience is having that much fun. Oh, yeah. And the music is all rock and roll and heavy metal and edgy, and you can't help but, bang your head, and it's just, it's so much fun.
It's not playing Pachelbel.
I like Pachelbel,
but it's different.
It is different. It is different. I have a version of Pachelbel in my quartet book that has this. It has this little paragraph at the bottom that says, you can play the traditional 8 notes that you want to play over and over, or if you would like to try to stay awake and keep your attention going, this arranger then took the 8 notes and made every variation on a theme of it throughout this cello part. It's fun. It's really fun to play. So
a little variety is always nice too.
Yes.
That's one thing that composers at home often don't get to experience, is the live side of things, people enjoying their music, especially those of us who have worked in film. Even if we're in the theater with the audience, we don't get to experience them enjoying our music per se. Right. They might just be enjoying the experience of the film. Right.
I think it is absolutely priceless to, I don't think that's the right word, but the advantage of, to me as the contractor, and also I can speak for the engineers as well, to have the composer in the booth is absolutely invaluable, because I can't tell you how many times things get changed on the fly, or like the composer will be sitting there and they'll hear what they envisioned on the page get played by the orchestra and realize, oh, that's not what I wanted at all, or oh crap, that didn't work. Mm-hmm. So they end up editing it on the fly, and we're able to turn around and put it in the room and make the change spontaneously. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. If a composer can be there in person, which is why I love doing live sessions, because it's so valuable to have the composer there. They will oftentimes come with their own team of assistants. They'll, if they don't have a score reader, I've gotten thrown in, and I become a score reader because I can read, and I've got incredible attention to detail, so I can help them suss out errors or make notes on the score and make suggestions as a string player. We end up working together really well as a team. And then I love it when the directors are able to come, because I've got a great, for this. They don't know what they don't know. I hope that isn't rude, but when they get into that studio and they see this coming to life, I see their eyes light up, and they're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And we did one movie in particular. It was a horror movie. It was one that the composer came to me and said, I don't think there's any way I'm going to be able to record this in LA, but I'd really like to. He already had his flight booked to Macedonia next week, and said, I've already resigned myself to the fact that I'm going to have to go there, but could you just take a crack at this and let me know what it would cost to do it here in town? So I did, but he gave me a great advantage, because he showed me the breakdown of what the Macedonian contract would look like, what the work schedule would look like. And I looked at it and I realized they wanted to use 22 hours in the studio to record this movie. And I thought, first of all, no one can afford, Hans Zimmer can afford a 22-hour long set of sessions, but most of my clients can't. And so the first thing I did was I knew the orchestrator, and he was also going to be the conductor. So we called a meeting and we powwowed. We sat down with the composer, the orchestrator, the lead engineer, and me, and the orchestrator was also the conductor. And we sat down for about 2 hours and we planned out meticulously how that session would run, so that we started the session with the largest group of musicians, which was, I think, 65 musicians. And then as we planned it, after the first 3 hours, we dismissed the trombones, and then we dismissed that group, and then we dismissed that group. And by the end of the day, we ended up booking 10 hours in the session instead of 22. We were able to dismiss people as they weren't needed any longer. So we weren't paying people to sit around and do crossword puzzles. And we were able to save the composer money every time we dismissed a group of musicians, and we got done early. So now I'm looking at the clock going, all right, guys, well, you've gotten all your cues. Is there anything you want to do over? And they're like, no, we're happy. So the director's kind of like, can I play? And I'm like, yeah. So he went out in the live room, stood on the podium with the conductor and said, all right, I need some sound effects. Can you make the sound of, and now think like a cellist, okay? We make all sorts of, we learned how to make fire engine noises on our cello before we learned a C major scale. So he turns to my cello section and he says, can you sound like a ghost creeping in and opening a really creaky door and then slamming the door and, something happens? Oh my gosh, they had so much fun. So we spent 45 minutes just coming up with scenarios and making sound effects. And he was the happiest camper at the end of that day. We got done with 45 minutes of improvised sound effects on top of that.
I love that.
At the same price that it would have cost to go to Macedonia. And it was simply because we didn't need 22 hours.
And not only that, but it's also a service to the musicians. If I'm a flute player and I'm playing on 5 cues, why do I need to be there for 8 hours or 10 hours or 14 hours? I'm not going to want to work for you again if I'm going to spend most of my day not working.
Exactly. I try to do what other contractors are doing and honor a minimum time commitment. Most people don't want to go out for less than a couple hours. So as long as I'm meeting that, and I'm respecting the musician and their time, they're pretty darn happy because they can get their cues done in an economy of time. They can get that done, and then they're happy. They get to take other gigs. They can leave, and then we move on and we do something else. So you're right. I think it's a very smart way to work. And I remember being told early on that there was a formula that you pretty much had to count on getting about 5 minutes of finished recorded music per hour in the studio. But I learned if you can work efficiently, and especially if you can organize the session really well, you can get up to 8 or 9 minutes. You can get 8 or 9 minutes of music done in an hour, or even more if the cues are really easy. We scored the soundtrack for the OJ Made in America documentary that was featured on ESPN. Gary Lionelli is the composer. We got done it was 33 cues. We got it done in 3 hours and 15 minutes. Wow. Which is pretty unheard of.
That's a hectic pace.
But it didn't feel hectic because we were organized. We got our breaks. Everybody got their 10 at the top of each hour. If we were really rocking and rolling and we were right in the middle of something, but it was time for a break, I'll go into the room and say, how does everybody feel? Do you need your break now, or can we go like another 10 minutes and then I'll give you 20? Mm-hmm. It's a very symbiotic relationship that we're able to work really efficiently.
It's a psychological thing. If you're treated better, you'll perform better.
Right. Right.
Unless you're one of those directors or one of those actors that really likes to be treated badly to get a good performance. But musicians don't typically work that way.
No. I hate being yelled at.
Let me, we're a little over time, but let me ask you one more question, because I think this is really an important one for the audience to understand. To be able to hire you to say, I need a 105-piece orchestra or whatever I'm going to need, what level do I need to be at to be able to provide you with what you need? Like, I'm going to need to give you music for them to play. I can't just say, hey, I need you to get me players, and then they're not going to know what to do.
Well, okay, that's a really good question, and I'm going to try to answer it really. So let's say you're a college student and you're just starting out. You know, I've been contacted by college students who've said, I'm writing a piano concerto, or I'm writing a string quartet or whatever. Maybe you don't know how to create the sheet music, but I can find you someone who could do that. So one of the things when I was really getting into more of doing television and movies and things like that, I thought about, like, how do I want to set myself apart from everybody else out there? Because there's great contractors in this town, and I do not compare myself to a lot of them. You know, I do what I do it very well, but they do great work, and that's awesome. And they'll always be really busy. I wanted to set myself apart by being very hands-on and being very thorough. So I call myself a concierge style contractor, simply meaning that I try to think of everything that is going to cost my client money. A seasoned composer is going to know that, but if, you know, someone just getting started might not quite know that, or they may have just gotten to LA and they don't know what the going rate is, or they don't know what studio time costs, or they don't know that they need a score reader and they need an orchestrator and they need to set their Pro Tools files and click up in advance. So I've learned, just again, I think organically, by going through the process, I kept notes on what most people seem to ask for, and I can get them that. So if you don't know how to write your own music and you just, you know, you're doing it in Pro Tools, we'll get you an orchestrator. The most important thing that I need to know is what is your working budget, and whether or not is that finite. You know, if you only have $100 to work with, I'm probably not your person. But I'll never turn someone completely away. Like, I had a guy come to me and ask if I could do something for a TV show that I knew could get the money, but he wanted me to do it for the exposure. And I said, I don't mind offering that for myself, but I am not comfortable going and asking all of my colleagues to do that, because he wanted like an 80-piece orchestra. I'm not comfortable asking 80 people to play for exposure. I don't think that's fair. Yeah. So, you know, I gave him some great suggestions. We've got some great training schools in LA. We've got Colburn, we've got Laksha, we've got the Orange County School of Performing Arts. We've got a lot of options out there. So every college has an orchestra. There's a lot of options. But you know, if you want it done, and you want it done here in town, and you want it done with top studio musicians, I can do that for you.
But you can also find other ways to supplement by recording people remote that, you know, maybe like college students and things like that.
Yes. It's amazing. Either using college students or using professionals at their, you know, their normal scale. They can get things done really fast. You know, if they're working in their studio and they can get it done in an hour, and they're willing to bill out for only an hour, that's not going to cost you a lot of money. And it's amazing how much one live musician adds to a soundtrack, to a MIDI soundtrack. Mm-hmm. If you add a quartet, that adds even more. It breathes life into the mechanical feeling of just a straight MIDI soundtrack. And they're amazing. The MIDI soundtracks and the libraries now are amazing. They get great sound, but it's amazing what one person can add to that. It puts the humanity into it. Absolutely. So I would always encourage people, ask, just you know, all over my website it says, you know, custom proposal. Put in for a free custom proposal. It doesn't hurt to ask, and you might be surprised what we can do with a limited budget.
It really is. And another thing that you can save on, a lot of people don't realize, if there is a piano in the room where the orchestra is recording, you have to hire somebody to tune the piano so that the piano doesn't vibrate just from the sound in the room out of key.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's really wild. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. But one last thing, you're doing something very special for our listeners. Through the end of the month, you're giving us a special offer.
Yes. So keep an eye on my social media and also on Scott's social media. We're going to run a promo through the end of the month. I'm going to be giving away. All you have to do is contact us, either DM us on social media or email us. Are you including our emails somewhere? Or
yes, they'll be in the show notes.
Okay. So just shoot us a message with the word mixer in it, and we're going to gift you the home recording studio ABC's class for free, and also 50% off any one session, the contracting fees, admin fees. I think that, contracting fees and admin fees, 50% off for one session.
That is really amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. People,
you're welcome.
Take advantage. I just took the course last night. Even if you're somebody who's had your studio up and running for a while, you can still learn some stuff from this. Sometimes we just need refreshers on the basics, and it's good to get back to that now and then.
Yeah, or the equipment has changed. Like I learned, not all cables are alike. If you just spend the money the first time on good quality cables, you won't have to be like me where you've spent thousands of dollars on cables that end up breaking. So it's good to talk to someone like my guy Scott at Sweetwater or whoever you've got, and get set up right the first time within your budget. There's lots of options.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Karen, for coming on the show. Good luck with the continuation of both of these programs. I think they're absolutely amazing. They're great opportunities for people like me who are independent composers to be able to work with people that we would probably not have access to otherwise.
Absolutely. My pleasure. You
take care and keep in touch.
Thank you.